The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Meyer, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC. I will be your facilitator for today's webinar. For those of you who are not familiar, the Virginia SBDC is the largest and most effective provider of customized counseling and education for small businesses in Virginia. Most of our services are offered locally in 27 locations throughout the Commonwealth. Today's webinar is one of our educational offerings and is part of our ongoing webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. Today's topic is Google Analytics 101 for small business. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, a web and mobile strategist, offer a no success, social media, local and web small business marketing strategy explained. I'm president of W3 Consulting. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those into the question window, and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SPDC for having me here on the webinar series. As Tracy said, there's the question panel. Feel free to ask questions now, and Tracy will interject, and I can answer those along the way, or I'll let you know that I'm going to answer them as we make our way through the hour. If you have questions after the webinar, my email address will be on the final slide, so feel free to take it down. And if you have a question that I'm not able to answer here during the webinar, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to send you to a resource or try to answer it myself. If you would like to, feel free to tweet at me at W3 Consulting. I'm always on Twitter. And so I'm happy to answer questions about these topics. Just hashtag it Beyond Google and I'll know. And then, of course, follow at Virginia SBDC so that you can stay abreast of future programs and information that the state office is putting out there for you out there in the Commonwealth. All right. So with that, what we're going to be talking about today is Google Analytics. And what I wanted to do is to set you all up for understanding what Google Analytics is all about. And so I wanted to start us off with a good definition of what Google Analytics is, go over some of where it fits into the ecosystem within Google and within the web as a small business trying to market your business. And then I'm going to take you into the tool and show you around. Again, this is a 101, so I'm going to go through the basics here. I'm not going to get it too deep into other things that Google Analytics can do, but I just want to show you around the tool so you can become familiar with it. Then I'm going to go through and walk you through a setup so you can see what it's like to get Google Analytics up and running on your website. And then we'll have some Q&A. We'll have some time for Q&A. So let's talk about what Google Analytics is. Google Analytics is a data collection and reporting tool. And what that means is that in the context of the web, you want to know what is happening on your website when somebody visits it. That is, this is a potential customer. This is somebody in your community that might want to buy from you, has purchased from you in the past or otherwise, and you want to be able to know what they're doing on your site so that you can be better informed for taking action on that information. So first and foremost, Google Analytics is a tool that allows you to take action from insights. So it's really about understanding what's going on your site so that you can take that information and make informed and better business decisions. So you really need to keep that as the fundamental objective of Google Analytics. It's not for the pleasure of seeing big numbers. It's not for being able to have vanity over getting X number of views or X number of people who visit your website. That's all but useless if you are not effectively taking that information and utilizing it. So Google Analytics is about taking action from those insights. Google Analytics is, or GA, I might reference it as GA as we make our way through the hour. GA is actually a part of a larger suite that Google has recently expanded into this platform, which they call the Google Marketing Platform. And Google Marketing Platform itself encompasses many other tools, but for small businesses, primarily, you have analytics, and analytics is a free tool for you. So there is a premium version. It's actually $150,000 per year for that premium license, for the enterprise license, but you don't need it as a small business because the way that Google Analytics is structured, they give you the version that you use for free, and you should be able to get along with the free version. So unless you want to spend $150,000 a year for the premium version, I would say go with the free version. And then it not underneath that, but connected to that, within the Google Marketing Platform are a couple other programs. And I just want to give you a flavor of what they do so that you're aware of them as you make your way along, get used to Google Analytics, and then you may want to look at all of these other tools to sort of integrate and work with your website. So first you have Data Studio. Data Studio is a tool that allows you to slice and dice and then visualize data from many different forms of data. For example, you could take data from your email marketing list. You could take data from Google Search Console, which is the place where you connect your website so that you can see how often Google is coming to your website and visiting it, and what they can see and what they can't see on your site, whether there are any technical problems that are not allowing them to see it. So Google Search Console data can go in there. You could take spreadsheet data, you could take Google Analytics data, and you can visualize it really well. So Data Studio is a really fantastic tool. It's a complex tool, but you can really see some really interesting data visualization with Data Studio. Then you have you have Optimize. And Google Optimize allows you to run tests so you can make minor changes to your website, say the color of buttons, moving images around or moving layout around ever so slightly so that you can run what we call A/B testing, but you can do it in a way that's really useful for your business to see whether or not one optimization on your website actually increases conversion in some way, shape, or form. Then there's Google Surveys. Google Surveys allows you to do market research. You can ask questions of real live people. They answer those questions and you get that data research back from them. It's affordable and it's a really great way to do marketing research. And then Tag Manager. Tag Manager is a way for you to manage the UTM codes or the tag tracking within analytics within your website. And so many times you will see a website that says, www.yourbusinessname.com / and then it'll say ampersand, the little and sign, and a bit of code. Okay, well, that bit of code is typically a tag. And if it's not executing some kind of code on the website, giving it some language to deal with, it's used for Google Analytics and other tools so that you can tell what's going on and where the traffic's coming from, why that link was clicked on. That tag, that what we call a tag, is what Tag Manager does. Tag Manager allows you to both create tags, but also to manage them, because it's called the Tag Manager, right? So you're capable of going in and managing those tags. So if you have a fairly robust website with a lot of different places from which you are directing people to your website, you can use the Tag Manager for doing that. So the Google Marketing Platform, if you go to marketingplatform.google.com, is a free tool where you can integrate these various tools, analytics and otherwise, together. You can see what things are already connected to one another and manage them there. So it's a really great tool. I recommend that you check it out. Okay, so what is Google Analytics' purpose? As I said at the start, Google Analytics' purpose is to take actions from insights, right? That's its tagline. And what I tend to tell people is that when you address Google Analytics, fundamentally, basically, you want to ask 3 questions when you're looking to do anything with Google Analytics. One is, what are you trying to find? Ask yourself, what am I trying to find? Am I trying to find out how many people visited my website last week? That's a very basic question, and that's something that Google Analytics can provide if you're tracking that data. So will I find it in Google Analytics? The answer is yes. Great. We're good to go so far. But then there's that final answer to this question, which is, what action will you take after reviewing the Google Analytics report? Again, if you just care about how many people visited your website last week, that's a vanity number. There's nothing useful about that other than you maybe feeling good. From the business's perspective, the business doesn't have emotions. It has either profitability or a lack of profitability, okay? And so we really need to figure out, what is it that you would learn from the number of people who visited your website by virtue of the action that you can take on that information. So based on that, what action would you take? What would you decide if you had, 30 people who visited your website? Is it that you want to know more about them? Is it that you want to increase the number so that you can have greater top line revenues? There's always something that you want to take action upon. So, what are you trying to find? Will you find it in Google Analytics? And that takes you becoming more familiar with the tool. And then ultimately, after you review the reports, what do you want to do? What action will you take based on what you learned from that information? And that's a business decision, right? That's not a technical decision. You may decide that you want to make some change to the website. You may decide that you want to do something differently, but the difference is a business decision. It's not necessarily a web marketing decision. Okay, so you really need to think about what that business decision is that you're going to make based on that. Okay, in order for us to move forward, Google Analytics is a fairly complex product that attempts to make statistics almost fun. So what I want to do is I want to go through the top 10 terms that really are necessary for you to get started before we hop into the tool. I'm going to go through these. You're going to get hopefully a general idea about what these terms mean, and you may not get them all as we make our way through them. That's okay. I'm gonna be using those terms throughout the webinar, and that will hopefully reinforce what those terms mean. But at the end, I'm going to direct you to the Google Analytics glossary, and you could always refer back to it so that you're making sure that you know what these terms mean, because they do actually make a difference in your ability to understand the data as it's displayed in both the charts and the reports. Okay, so number one is a hit. A hit in Google Analytics is basically any data collection activity that happens. So when someone does something in Google Analytics, when someone does something on your website and they interact with your website in some way, shape, or form, that's a hit, period. Any data collection that Google Analytics does, it considers a hit. When we talk about metrics, that's the measurement within Google Analytics. And Google Analytics actually only does two types of math. It does addition and it does division. So it shows us sums or ratios as an out, as a byproduct or an outcome of those metrics. So of those measurements. So metrics are always a sum of something, or they show you a percentage of something, so that you know when you're looking at metrics, you're never seeing, if you need to do any kinds of comparisons like month over month, week over week, or those kinds of things, it's going to show you a percentage. It's not going to show you a difference in numbers. It's going to show you a percentage of the difference. Page views. Page views are really important, and you want to know what that means when someone comes to your website. Now, when someone visits your website, those are called users, and users are tracked in sessions, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But when a user loads a page, that's considered a page view. But when they also hit refresh on the page in some way, shape, or form, in your browser, you might hit refresh, you might leave a page and type in a page directly. Anytime a page is loaded or reloaded, it is tracked as a page view. So you have to keep that in mind as people navigate your website. Someone might actually have multiple page views to that one user, to that one person during that session. An event is when when a user interacts with content, and by content, it typically means some kind of media. So that would be the download of an event record, the download of a file, like they download a PDF from your website. They click on an image in order to either expand it in a gallery view, or they download that image, or they open the image in another browsing tab. An event is when people interact with, in essence, a file that's associated with your website that's not just the loading of the HTML. And it could be a wide variety of things, MP3s, video, all kinds of things. Okay, so then we get into some of the metrics. And when we look at Google Analytics and metrics, they give us these terms, and they're giving us the terms so that we can understand what we're seeing in the reports and what kinds of data is being categorized. And one of those ways that we categorize things are what Google calls dimensions. So dimensions are any characteristic of a piece of data. And this is a little bit easier to understand when we look at them in the context of segments. So let's look at a segment as a set of users by some shared dimension. So let's say that we want to say a dimension is age or gender or geographic location. Well, by having that dimension, that age, gender, geographic location, we can then uh, look at a segment of people within that shared dimension. Okay, so we have dimensions and segments to be able to say, oh, okay, well, we have a group of people who are aged 18 to 25, and now what we want to do is to be able to take the shared dimensions for, say, age, gender, and geographic location and identify who those people are. It's kind of like Venn diagrams, if you know what Venn diagrams are. You're kind of overlaying one characteristic over another and seeing who overlaps. That's the segment. Then we have sessions. So sessions are when someone visits a website and they are active on your website or your blog or podcast page or whatever it is. So when they're sitting there on your page, a session begins. And so Google starts a timer and it starts clocking the moment they load the browser page and they're sitting on your site. Now, Google doesn't particularly care what they're doing. They could just have it active in view, and that's considered a session. Now, every 30 minutes, Google Analytics, in essence, resets the timer and it becomes another session. So if someone, for whatever reason, spends 30 minutes on your website and visits various different pages on your website, then that's considered a session. But the moment they tick over to 30 minutes, 1 second, a secondary session will begin. And then again, every 30 minutes, a new session will be logged in the system. So you have to keep that also in mind, that page views and sessions are something that you have to adjust your mindset around, because page views can be a loading or reloading of a page, and a session is limited by time, because if someone has been on your site, the same person can have multiple sessions in the same day if they've spent multiple under 30-minute time periods. Okay, then we have sources and mediums. So sources and mediums allow us to know where traffic is originating. And so if you, and we'll see this in the report, so don't worry too much about this, but the sources and mediums, in essence, tells us where people are coming from, whether they're coming from search, social, or a referring domain. In essence, they clicked on a website and that website sent them along to you. For example, if I clicked on a tweet that had a link to your website, the source would be social, and the medium would be Twitter, right? And so we would know what those things were by virtue of where the traffic was coming from, and it has those kinds of things displayed in the system. So we want to see what types of traffic are coming to us and who's sending us the traffic. Then we get goals and conversions. Goals and conversions are really important in Google Analytics. You must have them. Once you set up Google Analytics, you must have goals so that you can see conversions. I can't iterate this, explain this more often and impress upon you more often than I will during our time together. You must have goals and conversions. If you don't, Google Analytics is all but useless. Okay. The reason you have goals and conversions are that goals are the ways for you to track actions that people are taking, that users are taking on your website. So you want to know what you want people to do on your website. I use the analogy of a grocery store because in a grocery store, you know what people want to do when they walk in a grocery store, or at least as the grocer, you know what you want people to do when they walk in the grocery store. You want them to walk in the entrance, you want them to pick up a cart or a basket, and you want them to walk through the store in a particular way to pick up various items along the way, and then to come to the checkout line, put their groceries on the conveyor belt or whatnot, check out, pay, and then exit the building. Well, that's what your website is supposed to do. And it just needs to be done in a way that leads people in the right direction. So if your website is not designed for that kind of user experience, then you need to change it. You need to adapt to allow users to be able to do what you want them to do. Well, without goals, you really can't know that. So, what we do in Google Analytics is we set up goals to identify what the paths are. Do they click on this particular main navigation button on your website, and then do they click on this button when they get to this particular point? Do they fill out a form and click submit? Well, all of those things are things that we can track because it's the internet. And we can then say, okay, well, the goal is for us to get through those points and then ultimately get to this place. If they get to this place, that is a conversion. So conversion is when someone does the activity that you plan for them to do. And if they don't do that, then you can start to see where they fall out of the funnel, where they fall out of the pathway on their way to a conversion, and that way you can clean it up. Maybe people have too many clicks on their way to getting to that conversion, and so if you can reduce a few of those clicks, through just a couple of modifications of the website, you can then get more people converted, getting people to do what you planned for them to do along that pathway. Okay, so goals and conversions, really important. Google Analytics gives us a really great way to deal with this, and you want to write this number down, the 6367342. It's not the 8675309, but it's it's the demo account that Google gives you, and this is actually the Google Merchandise Store's demo account. But if you go to this support article, and I'm going to take us out to it in a moment, it gives us the ability to play around in Google Analytics in a read view only account. It's an active account of the Google Merchandise Store, and so we're capable of seeing what's going on. Here we are. So this is the article for the demo account, and so that 6367342 number. And what's going to happen here now is you are looking at instructions for accessing the demo account. Now, I've already done this, so I'm not going to go through it and do it. But in essence, you follow the instructions that they give here for you to implement within Google Analytics. You're going to create a Google Analytics account. And I didn't say this before, but I will now. You have to have a Google account. So creating a Google account requires any email address. You don't have to have a Gmail account. You just have to have an email address, and you'll go to google.com and then sign up. You'll create an account, and then you can go to analytics.google.com and sign in, and then they'll take you through the process of creating an account. And since that changes constantly, I'm not going to walk us through that. That's just going to be a nightmare. But anyway, the point is once you have a Google Analytics account, GA will give you access to this demo account simply by clicking the Access Demo Account here, and then voila. Okay, so Google Merchandise Store is the place where it's an e-commerce store where people buy Google branded, Alphabet branded merchandise, because it has all kinds of different products, Android and Google, all the various Google products and that kind of thing. So people are on the site and actively using it, and this allows you to be able to go into the account and play around and see what's going on and all that fun stuff. I'm going to go into the account in a short while, but what I want to do is I want to take you into an actual active account, one of my Google Analytics accounts, so that you can see what it's all about. I want to show you around the various different tiers of Google Analytics, and then we can talk a little bit more about the various parts of it. So what we are in right now is Google Analytics, and we are actually in the admin panel. I'm going to walk you through the interface, so don't worry so much about that. But in essence, we're down here in the gear icon once you're inside the Analytics panel, and so you'd click on that panel, and then ultimately you'd be taken into the property here. Now you can always know where you are because we're in all accounts. Then we're inside of Web and Beyondcast, which just happens to be my podcast, and so we're looking at all website data, and we know that that's the view that we're in. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. Google Analytics is structured in 3 different layers. There are accounts which allow you up to 100 accounts per Google account. You likely need 1 account. So I wouldn't worry about that. So you just create 1 account and you'll manage everything in that 1 account. If you believe for some reason after I explain the rest of this that you need more than 1 account, email me and I will be happy to explain whether or not you need more than 1 account. But the only real reason I would imagine is that you have a separate legal entity for different businesses, so each one of them should have its own account, or you are a marketing agency or an advertising agency that is managing this for other businesses, in which case then you would create multiple accounts because each account should hold that business's data. And even then, there are some ways that you can work around that. Okay, so an account is in essence the business. Then you have properties. You can have up to 50 properties per account. So if you do the math, right, if you have 100 accounts, 50 properties per account, you can have 5,000. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's 5,000 properties across the entire Google account. So the GA accounts are 100. You have 50 properties per account. So that's 5,000 total properties inside of a Google account. And then what the property is in essence each website. So if you have multiple websites, say you have a website, but the blog is separate, or you have a Meetup. Meetup integrates with Google Analytics. And that's the other thing. Google Analytics integrates with all kinds of web properties that you might not think about. But if you're using any other platforms that integrate with Google Analytics, and they give you the ability to track that data, I would absolutely take advantage of it. So, for example, I run several meetups and they give us access to putting in Google Analytics. You better believe I immediately engaged Google Analytics on the system I implemented GA, because now I can see who are the members who are coming to my site, how long are they visiting and spending time there. I can learn all kinds of things from those properties within GA. So properties really manage per website property, or maybe if you have a mobile application, you would have a property. And then ultimately, you then have the views. Now, views are a way for you to be able to see filtered sets of data that are flowing into GA. Traditionally, you are going to have, or I guess generally, you are going to just have 2 to 3 views. When you create a new analytics property, it's going to give you an all website data view. That one, and I'm going to do this here so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about, since I haven't done this yet for the podcast. Here we have all website data, and we have a whole bunch of options underneath this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on View Settings, and in essence, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be turning this one that is here, all site view, I'm just going to call this raw data. Okay, so that's the first view you're going to create, is just renaming the default view they give you to raw data. Views, when you start implementing Google Analytics, captures data from the point in which you start tracking the data forward. Google Analytics cannot see the past. So if you start tracking GA today on your website, it can't see yesterday or 3 weeks from now, from today, 3 weeks in the past from today. It does not see the past. It only starts tracking the moment you put the code on the site, and it actually starts tracking data. And if you tell this view that you don't want to collect certain types of data, then if it doesn't collect it when it is implemented on your site, then it's never going to collect it. Okay, so it's really important to understand. We want to make sure that we are collecting and reviewing the data, best for the situation. So we want to collect the raw data. Okay, next we're going to see the URL for the site, and in this case, you're going to just put in the URL. If you have an SSL certificate, which we're going to be implementing on this podcast site very soon, but it's not there right now, you want to go ahead and put the HTTPS if it is there. So HTTP or HTTPS. Your time zone is important so that you're tracking data in a way that you're going to see. If for some reason the default page is different than the the naked URL. You want to obviously put that in there. You likely won't have anything to do with URL query parameters at the outset. You can block spiders and bots. Those are in essence software programs that come around and look at your website. You can exclude them from hits if you want to, and you can turn on or off site search tracking. Okay. But on this one, on the raw data, we just want to leave all of these blank. I mean, we really don't want to do anything. We just want raw data, and we want the website URL, and we want to go ahead and click save. Now, what's going to happen is you're never going to touch this view settings area again for raw data. And the reason for that is that we're going to change the other views. And if we create other views for other situations, we want to make sure we have a raw feed that should one of those other views for some reason mess up what we did in that view, we want the raw data to always be collecting everything. Okay, so we can always filter once we've collected all the raw data, but we don't want to collect from a filtered view that is not collecting that data, because then it's lost. If Google Analytics didn't collect it out the gate, it doesn't have that data. So at that point, you create a new view. Okay, so I just clicked create view, and again, we can go in here and we can create more views if we need to. Why would you create another view? For example, say that you are not using a system, say you have custom coded a website and you have a system where it's just tracking everything that comes in the door from the website. Well, maybe you don't want to track your own traffic. That is when you visit your website or when your employees visit your website. Well, with a view here, you can actually do that. So you can go in here and say, this is let's just call this our default view or master view. I typically call it master view. And so we have our raw data and we have our master view, and let's just put in the normal time zone. We'll click create view. And now I'm in master view, right? And I can see that I'm in master view from up here as well. But I'm going to click on view settings. And then again, everything's pretty much the same, except down here we have filters, okay? And so I can click on filters, and I can filter based on a whole variety of information. I can say, what's my IP address at my office building? And I can actually tell the I can say IP filtering for office building. And so what I can then do is I can go ahead and exclude traffic from an IP address, and I can actually put that IP address in there. An IP address is a physical location on the internet, and that is where you are publicly accessing the internet. And I can put that IP address, you could just type in what's my IP into Google, and Google will actually tell you what your IP address is. And you can place that in there and then click save. And now you are filtering out your own traffic. That is when you're visiting your own website, because for all intents and purposes, if you don't care about yourself visiting your website, then you don't need to see that stuff. And so you can have this kind of filtered view out the gate. Okay, but there are other ways and reasons why you'd want to filter certain types of view. Maybe you get a lot of junk traffic from random countries. You might want to filter those things out of view also, because it's just muddying the data. So you can actually go in after the fact into this master view and remove those kinds of data. Remove those types of data that are not useful to what you're seeing on the business. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. The rest of this is all very, that's all later on down the road. But I think view settings and filters are something that you should know about, at least in this level. On the user tab, you can actually add other people. So I always recommend that you at least have one other person with access to your Google Analytics account in a read view status, or if there's somebody there that you trust, giving them administrative privileges just in case you do lose access to the Google account. You want to have some kind of backup. If you have multiple Google accounts, then I would appoint all of the Google accounts that you would want to have access to it as a backup, so that, again, you can access it from anywhere. That way, no matter what Google account you're logged into, you can access it. But also, if something were to happen to the primary Google account that does have access to it, you want to still be able to get into the Google account and see that data. Okay, so that's pretty much the settings side once we get things set up. And I know I'm going a little bit backwards, but it's just helpful for me to do this here while you're seeing the system in this live setting. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hop over to a form of the merchant store. So as we talked about before, the Google Merchant Store gives you this demo access account. And so where I am now is in the demo account so that you can see what Google Analytics looks like once you have set it up. Okay, and again, we're gonna do the setup at the end. But the idea here is that just pretend we're in we've set it up and now we're tracking data, and this Google Merchant Store gives us the ability to slice and dice data, to look at it, and to understand the data a little bit better, because potentially your website doesn't have enough data yet for you to be able to understand and to play around and to understand what things are doing on the site. So this helps you kind of play around and make mistakes, and you can't do anything wrong here because you only have read view access, so you can't really actually do anything too harmful. Okay, so Google Analytics, when you first come to it and it's set up, gives you the view of the Google Analytics homepage. The homepage is just kind of an overview page that gives you some really quick details. I'm going to go over it really cursory, and then we're going to jump into the different portions of it. Again, always at the top here, you're going to see Google Analytics, and the icon here will take you to the home page. Whenever you click on this little button, it'll take you back to this page if you are in any other area of Google Analytics. Here it tells you what account you are in and what view. So it shows you're in all accounts. We're inside of the Google Merchant Store account, and then we have our view. Okay, so we know where we are always at the top. If you click this button, it then gives you a drop down, and you can always search to get where you want to go. Okay, so if I wanted to get to Web and Beyond Cast right now, I could automatically do that. It's not shared with this account, but I could immediately jump to Web and Beyond Cast just by typing it in. It'll show up and be here at the bottom. Well, here goes our blog, right? So here, I typed in just the name of our blog, and voila, there it is. And I can jump to it now just by clicking on it. Okay, so it's really helpful to have that kind of control. But right now, I just want to be in the master view of the Google Merchandise Store. Okay, so here we have just some basic data. It's showing us the last 7 days of traffic in this chart. And again, as I said before, the metrics that are typically shown are sums and ratios. So note here that this is 15,000 users. This is an addition of all of the collected hits that are happening on the website related to users. So we have 15,000 users that are active on this store site in the last 7 days. It is 0.3% reduction over the prior 7 days, and so on and so forth. So we can look at this from a revenues perspective. They've had $70,000 in revenues over the last 7 days. That's 187% increase over the prior 7 days. Conversion rate, they've set up a conversion rate that is how many people checked out of their store. And so you can see that they have a 1.6% conversion rate. That's up 31.2% over the prior 7 days. And then sessions. As we talked about before, sessions are those under 30-minute periods of time where one user has multiple page views. Okay, so that's the time a single or multiple page views, but under 30 minutes. So they've had 20,000 sessions. That's 3.4% increase over the prior week. Okay, so we can see that graphically, and we can see some information about what's happening about the users that are active on the website right now. So there are 21, now 20 users who are active on the website at this moment. You can see the levels of page views changing as we've been talking. You can see the number of active users on the pages that they're on. You can actually go to the real-time reporting. That's a Google Analytics 102, maybe 103 course. So we won't talk about that today. But as we scroll down the master view page for the home screen, we then get to see some other very basic information. Again, this is all stuff that you can review on your own time in the store, but you can kind of see the other basic overview of those data. And I'm going to talk about some of these pieces when we get into the left panel. Okay, so that's the home page. Honestly, the homepage is really informative. It can be very, very helpful, but ultimately that doesn't answer that final question in the 3 questions that I always recommend to people, right? So what am I trying to find in Google Analytics? What am I going to be able to find it in Google Analytics? Where where am I going to find it? And ultimately, what action am I going to take on the information that I find? Okay, so here we have home. Here you can customize the home page, so you can customize this to move things around, which is really helpful. Down here we have now our reports. I'm going to skip real time. That's beyond the purview of today. And we have 4 different areas of the left panel, and this takes you into all of the subsequent reports to see what Google Analytics provides. So let me go over them. Audience tells you who is visiting your website. It tries to look at the various dimensions and the segmentation of the audiences, of the people visiting your website, and giving you information to be able to understand who is visiting your website. Next is acquisition. Acquisition is, how are you getting people to your site? Why are they visiting your site? So this answers who, this answers kind of why, okay? And then next is behavior, and that really answers what are they doing when they're on your website? What are people doing when they visit your website, and then once they're on your site, what are they doing while they're on your website, and what do they do when they leave? We want to understand why people are leaving, but what are they doing when they're leaving? And ultimately, conversions, which should answer why were people on the website in the first place, and what we ultimately want to answer as a business is what on the website is effective. Is the website being effective, and what can we do to make the website better so that it's more effective for us? We want to convert people. So by establishing goals, we can then ultimately pay attention to conversions and then fix those things. Now, to create conversions, that actually happens in the admin panel. There's actually a really great resource for that in the Analytics Academy, and I'll talk about that at the end. So don't worry about that so much, but you do want to learn how to create goals and learn how to set them up correctly. Goals, something that I didn't say before, is see how they have this set up with revenues here. It shows $70,000. Well, that's because their goal has a dollar value associated with their goals, or with their goal or goals. So because it's an e-commerce store, they can probably track that data fairly accurately. But even if you have a business where it's not particularly known, you can kind of guess. You can make some educated guesses, estimations about how much value each conversion is. So if I were to say, well, every time someone came to my podcast and downloaded a podcast episode, that's worth $1 to me. Okay, just arbitrarily, right? And so therefore, if I get 3,000 conversions in a month, that means that was worth $3,000 to me. So that's where that revenue number is coming from. That's where the conversions can really be useful to you, because you can say, oh, you know what? For every person who downloads my white paper or my PDF from my website, I tend to make $1. And so each one of those represents a dollar value, and you can see what that means to you. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to go into each one of these. It's just I want to give you an idea about how all of this works and the time that we have together. But this is how the reports work, and I really recommend that you go into Google Analytics, you go into the Google merchandise store, and you just kind of poke around and play with the data and see how the data displays and different ways in which the data can be manipulated. But in essence, this is how you use the various reports. So as we talked about before, segments are, you can add segments here. So in this particular case, we're seeing all users on the site and in this audience report. And again, this will be the case in all of the reports. And so we have all users displaying right now for the time period that we are looking at. I can add other segments. So I can go in here and I can say, you know what, I don't want all users. I want to just see people who converted, and I want to see people who not only converted, but I want to see people who made a purchase. Okay, and so you see we can start adding segments to the system so that we can start to see more and different kinds of information. I'm not going to do that here, not necessary, but we're just going to look at all users. And in the system, on every report, you're going to see save, export, share, and insights. Insights are really helpful because what it does is it starts to try and give you feedback in terms of what you can do to make your website better. In essence, how can you make your goals better? How can you make your conversions better? What can you do to make your website better in general? It gives you those kinds of insights based on what it's looking at. But anyway, so we have the option of saving a report. And this really just means that if you've made some kind of modification, maybe you've spent some time tweaking a segment just exactly the way you want, well, you can save that so that you can look at it again later. It's a saved search, in essence, for that report. We can also export reports. So I can go here and I can say, for this exact report, I want to just download a PDF of this so I can email it to my accountant. Say if I have some kind of information I want to share with my marketing agency or my marketing strategist, or I want to share that with my staff, you can do that here by exporting it and then emailing it to them. And you can download that in PDF, Google Sheets, Excel, and CSV formats. So if you export it, obviously, the Google Sheets, it'll put it into the Google Sheets platform, and you can share it with them there. You can also share the document via email directly from here. And again, you have that option of sending the attachment as PDF, Excel, or a CSV. What I recommend to you, though, is that once you get comfortable with having worked around and through Google Analytics, you actually set it up to email to you the reports that you want to see on a regular basis. And since you can choose, for example, say that you want your acquisition reports to go to your sales person, the person who's working on sales in your store. Well, you might want to set up a specific report to be emailed to the salesperson every Monday so that he or she knows exactly what's happening in terms of acquisition, where people are coming to your website, so that they're walking into your store, you have some sense of that, or whatever it might be, right? It's just the idea that you have a specific report you might want to share with them. You may decide that for conversions, you want to send your conversions report to your accountant so that your accountant can look at the number of people who have checked out in your e-commerce solution and reconcile that with the actual numbers that are happening. Maybe you want to send a conversion report or an audience report to your business partner. Well, you can do that. Send it to them on a frequency of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and that will set you up for having your weekly, monthly, annual, or quarterly meeting, right? Say that you have some huddle that you have on a regular basis. We can just go ahead and do that. For me, I like to look at my reports weekly, so I have this set up to just email me the PDF of the reports that I like, and so for each report, it will send you a separate email, and so I get a report from each of these areas: the audience acquisition, behavior, and conversions. And so I get 4 reports emailed to me on Friday mornings, and then I can just review them. And that way I know what's going on in the way that I want to know what's going on. And if I want to look deeper, I can then click on the report in the PDF, and it'll take me into the analytics dashboard. And now I'm capable of diving deeper into the data that may not make sense. For example, if for some reason we had a day where we had traffic really dip, like what happened? Or had an opportunity where, oh, something really dramatic on the chart shows that we had a lot of traffic for some reason. Why was that? And once you know that, then you want to consistently come back to Google Analytics and actually do this. So in every report, wherever you are, you can actually add what are called annotations. So in this top area, this is the chart area or the graphing area for any report. And then below any graphing area is going to be the tables. And these are the tables. Now, they, of course, look different based on the type of data that you're looking at. But in essence, you will see the chart area where it tries to show you graphical information. And then below that, it will show you the table data where it's trying to show you the underlying information associated with the charts or graphs. But annotations are really, really useful. So, for example, say that next week, by luck or by really good public relations, you are going to be featured in local, state, or national media. You can click on Create Annotations, and you can make note of the media appearance. Okay, and now you can click Save, and that's going to be anchored into the time, the day that traffic has been tracked for, so that when someone else later on down the road comes to the Google Analytics dashboard, they'll be able to see that information as well. Because many times you'll see spikes in traffic and you'll not know why there are spikes in traffic. Well, if people are paying attention, oh, you know what, I did that farmers market last week and I gave out a bunch of brochures, a bunch of business cards, and then you see a spike in traffic. Well, that's why. But 3 years from now, when you're starting to look at all of the data and you don't remember being at the farmers market, well, that's going to be able to help you understand that later on down the road. Okay, so it's really important for you to be able to do that. Couple quick things, and then I'm gonna leave the dashboard. I just wanted to give you an overview of the dashboard. So if you click in this top right-hand corner of any report, you're going to see a time frame. Once you set a time frame, it will flow to all the other reports until you change it. So here I have it set to the last 30 days. So it's going to show me October 17th through September 8th. And I have it doing a comparison to the prior period. So I can turn that on or off. And you can see that if I turn it on, it's going to give me percentages to show me increase or decrease, or I could turn it off. Okay, I'm going to leave it on just for the sake of it. I'm going to hit apply, and now it's applying that data. It's showing me data for those 2 periods of time. The top period is in blue right now, and the bottom period is in orange. And now if I click on any other report, let's just click on the overview report for acquisition. Note that that same time period and the comparison time period are the same. That will stay the same throughout the entire system for the rest of your session unless you change it. It's really, really useful so that you can know that you're looking at the same period. You don't want it to be jumping around dates or to set itself back by accident. Okay, so also when we're looking at the different types of information, so let's go to acquisition. And I'm just going to go quickly down to referrals here. And so we're in the referrals report. And as we said before, referrals are one type of source or medium, right? So a source being a referral refers what websites are referring traffic to the Google Merchandise Store. Well, we can see that this mall.googleplex.com, analytics.google, sites.google, these are websites that are directing traffic to the site. And remember, we did a comparison. So it's showing me the first set of dates, the second set of dates, and then it's showing me a sum, and it's showing me a percentage increase or decrease. Okay, great. So here now we are seeing one primary dimension, the dimension being the source. That is mall.googleplex and so on and so forth. If I wanted to add another dimension, if I click on the dimension piece here in the chart, I can always then search for other dimensions. So I'm not going to do this now, but I recommend to you that you go in here and just start browsing around and seeing the different kinds of other dimensions that are available to you so that you can see the data sliced and diced differently. So for example, here, I just randomly added a second dimension for the landing page for that source. So the source refer was mall.googleplex.com, and the landing page was the home page. But here for the Creator Academy on YouTube, it was actually a Google redesign and a shop by brand YouTube page. If you start noticing that kind of information, that could be potentially useful for you in making some critical business decisions to market smarter to your audiences. Okay, so that's the interface in just a brief nutshell. So you can start to get in there and play around. You can click on day, week, and month, and see the graphs change in a way. You can sort things just by clicking on a particular column. So you can see here this is sorted in descending order on the users column, but I can sort this based on the number of sessions, and it's going to sort all the information then based on the number of sessions in descending order. Okay, so you can kind of play around with it and look at the numbers in different ways and see what the data tells you. All right, so very, very quickly, I just want to walk you through what it's like to set up Google Analytics in different environments. There are multiple Google Analytics focused plugins for WordPress. So this is a WordPress installation, a dummy installation that I created just for purposes of today. But in essence, what we want to do is we want to be able to install a plugin, and most of them pretty much do the same thing. They're going to ask you to put in your UA code number, which is the urchin account number that is attached to Google Analytics, and it's going to start with UA dash and then a series of numbers. Or it's going to ask you to authenticate your Google account and then ultimately secure the profile for that particular property. So in this particular case, it's asking me to authenticate my account after I've installed and activated the plugin, and then voila, here we are. Here goes the merchant account store, and it's asking me to choose a view, right? And in this particular case, I'm going to want to collect the it's going to collect the data for the raw data view, but I want to always see the master view. So I'm going to click on raw data to collect all of the data. Okay, so it's just going to start collecting all of the data for the site, and it's going to push it into the merchant store. And then ultimately, the view that I'm going to look at though is the master view. So you're going to collect raw data, but you're going to view the master. So you complete the authentication. It's giving me an error here because I don't have access to Google's system here, but that's kind of the idea here, is that you want to do it. Once you click authenticate, it will come back here, and then it will show you a series of options that you have. You'll click on the settings here. It'll take you there, but I would click on settings here, and you would see all the various options that you can set up. This is one plugin of many, so I'm not worried about this particular plugin, but you just choose the things that you want to see within your Google Analytics collection. Okay, next is, and all of you can ask me during Q&A if there are other sites that you want to know more about, but I'm just going to cover these because they give a fairly accurate view of how most of these will happen. So WordPress will require a plugin plus importing either your urchin account number, your UA number, or authenticating using that authenticate with your Google account functionality. In a site like Squarespace, it's going to actually have a space for you just to paste your Google Analytics account number. And so you'll go to Home, Settings, Advanced, External Services, and then it'll have your GA field there for you to be able to connect to it. So some sites will just do this. Then other sites are like, and Wix does the same thing. But other sites, this is Shopify. Shopify also integrates with Google Analytics. And what Shopify does is they actually have you paste the code for Google Analytics here. So that's a little bit different than the other two, right? So WordPress says authenticate with your UA number or with your with the authenticate with Google functionality, where it pops up your user account, it asks for access to it, and then you select your GA property and the view that you want to be collecting against, the raw data feed. Here it says, nope, we just want the code that Google gives you. And while I didn't show this, when you open up a new Google Analytics account, it will give you that code. It'll give you the tracking number, and then right below it, it'll say, here goes the code. That's the code they're asking for you to paste in here. And they're actually asking you to paste the code itself into the Shopify. So you'll see all three options potentially as you make your way through setting up. Okay, so back to here. I just wanted to very quickly go over some of the support options that you have in Google Analytics. So number one is Analytics Help. So if you go to analytics.google.com and then /support, you will be taken here to the Google Analytics Help space. And this allows you to be able to find almost any question that I wasn't able to answer in our time today. As I said, this is a very big product, and I just wanted to show you a little bit around. So start here at the Google Analytics Help. This is actually the glossary. So if you're in the Analytics Help place by going to analytics.google.com /support. Up here, you're just going to type in glossary, and then you will find this glossary. And here goes all of the terms defined. Now, like I said, I only defined 10 of them. There are many more, and you will want to know what these mean. So look up the glossary. If you want to learn more about Google Analytics, then this is where you want to go. You want to go to the Analytics Training and Support page. Now here, it has the Analytics Academy, and this is where you're going to learn about goals and conversions, okay? It's a free online course, and it walks you through how to set up goals and conversions. I didn't have time to go through this today because it does take a little bit of understanding, but by all means, all of you can do this. It's not that difficult. It's just a matter of figuring out how to set them up. So you can go into Analytics Academy and learn about that. You can access the demo account for the Google Merchandise Store, the Analytics YouTube channel, which has some videos about data analysis, and you can read the Analytics blog. If you have support questions, you can handle them here. If you have kind of a wormier situation that's not quite you're having difficulty figuring that out, I want you to go to Google and I want you to type in Google Analytics Solutions Community. Okay, this is the Google Analytics Solutions Community, and there, notice that it has all of the Google Marketing Platform products, but the first discussion forum is Google Analytics, and you can ask a specific question to your, specific to your situation, what you're trying to fix, what the problem is that your challenge you're facing, and you can ask that here. And there are people who are also Google Analytics certified specialists, and they can answer those questions for you here. Sometimes these are other marketing agencies. These are people who do marketing trainings and that kind of thing, and they're in there helping you along with other Google employees. So you start off in the analytics.google.com / support area, and the general questions can be answered there. More specific answers can be answered here in the solutions community. Okay, so with that, we are at time, I believe, and I'm happy to answer questions and stay here and do that.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar so those people that don't have questions can get on with their day. But as Ray said, we'll stay and answer questions if you have them. Thank you for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and it will be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on this webinar, and there'll be an evaluation link in the email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. If you want to fill it out now, I put the link in the chat window. You can click on that and do that. Our next webinar is November 1st, and it's how to monetize your content marketing properly as a small business. So we do have quite a few questions, so let me get started. Thanks, Ray, for the presentation. I use analytics and also have Google Plus page for my business. Do I also need a plugin for my website, WordPress site?
Yes, so there are several WordPress plugins. You can use Monster Insights. Google Analyticator is another plugin. There are several plugins that actually have it built in, like all-in-one SEO plugin, I believe, has Google Analytics functionality built into it. So look at the plugins you already have in your WordPress installation, talk to your web host, talk to your web developer, and see whether or not that functionality is already there. If you are running your WordPress website on WordPress.com, that's different than self-hosting it on your own web hosting account, right? So you want to make sure that if you have WordPress.com, you have to have a business account, a business level plan, in order to be able to use Google Analytics. That's WordPress.com's choice, not Google Analytics, GA's choice. So, but yeah, you would use one of those plugins if you are self-hosted, and that's only if you already don't have a plugin that has that functionality.
How does Etsy integrate with Google Analytics?
That is a good question. I believe they have a setting for being able to, most of these platforms have their own analytics tools. So Etsy will provide you with an analytics tool that tells you how many people come to your Etsy store and all of that information. But then you will be able to go into the Etsy settings and set up Google Analytics within Etsy. So you'll I believe you go into the shop manager, right? There's like a stats, and then you can see in the shop manager all of your stats. But if you go into settings within Etsy, you'll be able to enter your UA number. That I believe it's 8-digit number, so it's like UA and then 8 digits. And if you plug that Google Analytics tracking ID into Etsy inside of settings, you'll be able to then start capturing that data, not just from the stats dashboard, but into Google Analytics itself. So it integrates and you can do it.
Beyond a website, would I employ Google Analytics on a social media page like Facebook business page or on a business Twitter page, or is Google Analytics redundant in that regard because Facebook/Twitter have their own business analytics that I'm
Right.
not aware of?
That's a great question. So this comes down to whose data are you going to trust? And ultimately, every platform is going to track data a little bit different. So, for example, the way in which numbers are rounded will by its very nature change the way in which reports and percentages will be calculated. So I like to actually track in multiple ways so that I can look at the two different sets of data and and decide which one seems more accurate to me. And so while Facebook Insights is really important, and I believe that you should be looking at those reports, I think it's also really important to be tracking on your own website when someone visits your website from those places. I wouldn't depend upon Facebook Insights to tell me about the people who are visiting my website. So you would need both of those. Ultimately, you would use tags, and that was beyond the purview of today's discussion. But I would look at the idea of using tags so that when you are posting from Facebook, from your website to Facebook, meaning that people are going to click on posts on your Facebook page and come to your website, you're looking at the appropriate codes, those UTM tracking codes. That's Universal Tracking Manager codes, so UTM codes. You want to be able to go in and be able to slice and dice against that data within Google Analytics. So you can say, oh, you know what, this post that we posted from Hootsuite or wherever to Facebook, that ultimately came to our website, and this is what that user did. And that way you can connect those pieces. So you need both.
Great, thanks, Greg. And then the last question is, if I go to Google search and go to an ad that's listed there, like B&H photo, and I click on it, it then logs in as if I've been to the site previously. Do they get charged by Google each time, or is there a way not to charge them each time I do this?
If you click on an ad that's on Google search, then in some way, shape, or form, the publisher of the ad is paying for either being viewed or being clicked on. So I wouldn't know by looking at the ad whether or not they're paying for the times when you click on it. Unfortunately, that's, because of the way that the auction system on Google Ads works is designed to be pay per view, like pay per impression, which is a much cheaper payment, and meaning that they're paying for every time you see their ad, no matter what. And then there's pay per click sometimes, where they're paying when you click on the ad, and in which case, when you do click on the ad, they are paying. So I wouldn't know that without otherwise knowing the advertiser themselves. Sorry.
Great, thanks, Ray, and thanks everybody for attending today. We'll see you on November 1st, hopefully. Thank you.